So we are late this week, so we're gonna do one show for 2 weeks. We're just gonna do an extra long show this week because it's all kinds of crazy. My daughter's starting kindergarten, and you're cutting a movie, and how's that going, by the way?
Oh, just you know what? It's the whole point. It's the whole reason, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
It's the whole reason for everything.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. Very funny. This is why I know it's working. My mother, whom of course you know.
Yeah.
My mother said, Tim, that was really funny. If my mother thought it was funny,
nice.
My mother hates everything.
Yeah.
Just absolutely like Mikey from the Life commercials. Can't stand anything. And she's like, okay, you know what? This is funny. This is really, really funny. And when my mother gets happy, I get happy. So, going really well.
Fantastic. And what a week it has been. So we lost Aretha. And then Boots Riley attacked Spike Lee with a big long letter. Aja Argento gets accused by a former
young man
that she directed.
Yeah, I interviewed both of them during the press junket for that movie.
My wife worked on that movie.
Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, she never did, she interfaced with the producer. What she was doing was, financial stuff. But anyway.
And people don't know that movie, The Heart is a...
The Heart is Deceitful Above All Things.
Which is a sort of quasi... It's adapted from but it's also sort of... And there's a lot of Aja Argento stuff in that movie. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting sort of thing. I got to dig up that interview.
And of course, then she came and she said, "No, look, it was a shakedown." And Anthony Bourdain, now he gets dragged back into this posthumously. It's like this is crazy news. And then Crazy Rich Asians does nutty business at the box office. Does better than the Mark Wahlberg film, obviously better than the Kevin Spacey film. But that's
it's interesting. It does better than both. But then again, it is better than both.
Yeah.
So yes, Crazy Rich and the Asian thing and all of that. But I do want to point out that it's a better movie.
Yeah.
So this isn't just a whole bunch of Asian people, overhyping one movie. This is a movie that's better than all the other movies.
It's, I have said for a long time, and I will continue to say that when people kind of focus on the issue of diversity, what they're missing is this fact: talent is diverse.
Yes.
If you're just following the talent, diversity will inevitably be a part of it. The idea that somehow we need to focus on diversity because the problem is not that you're not hiring enough people of other backgrounds and beliefs and whatnot. The problem is you're not chasing the talent.
Yes,
you're not going where the talent takes you.
There's simply a matter of a belief system, and it's an old it's a belief system regarding all kinds of things, not just Hollywood.
Fear driven. It's fear driven.
But in Hollywood, there was a belief system that was all of the talent resided in a specific place.
Yes,
and that was always that was never true.
Yeah.
And then we came maybe there's some talent over here. Okay, so then that gets better.
Yeah.
But we are only now approaching the place where Hollywood writ large is like, okay, the talent is everywhere.
Yeah.
The money, which is by the way saying the money is everywhere. So let's go get the talent and the money from everywhere, everywhere. And then everybody is serviced in terms of the audience. For one thing, all audiences are serviced. And by the way, those audiences aren't. I love Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah.
Middle-aged brother from St. Louis, love Crazy Rich Asians. So and by the way, I did not see that movie for the show or I missed it in our little press thing.
Yep.
So what do? I went and bought a ticket. Went up the street, bought a ticket, paid to see the movie.
And they turned down a Netflix deal in order to get into theaters.
Yeah, Warner Brothers and all that. And that's a good, nice poke in the neck.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
To Netflix. I was like, that's not going to work all the time, Netflix.
Yeah.
Because had Netflix done that, and then did that thing that they do,
would have gone away.
And it would be playing on Netflix right now.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't. And it's just not the same thing.
It wouldn't be.
Not the same.
It wouldn't be. It wouldn't be knocking down the door that it's knocking down.
Yeah.
Right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the previous they qualify this in a dozen different ways. So all Asian cast, directed by an Asian person, released by a major studio. Joy Luck Club, 25
years ago. Look, Joy Luck Club, 1993. Mm-hmm.
And that is a lot of qualifying, by the way.
But you know what? There were 3 films. 1993, by the way, the year of Schindler's List, which was not my favorite film of the year. I had 3 films that year. That to me, that's the greatest film year in my film reviewing career. 1993. There were 3 films that year. Actually, hold on. Maybe 4 films that year that are among my 10 favorite films of the last 25 years. 4 in 1 year. Remains the Day, Joy Luck Club, Farewell My Concubine.
Oh yes.
And The Piano.
Oh yes.
Those were all the same year.
Yeah.
Those are 4
Campion,
unbelievable
Ivory,
movies.
Wang Wang is Joy Luck, right?
Yeah.
Campion, Ivory, Wang, and
Chen Kaiga.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That was a fantastic year.
Great
Followed
year.
The next year by Quentin's.
Yeah, that's right. That was Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
that's right.
It was a run, man. The 90s were a son of a bitch, boy.
They were. I'll tell you, I will never forget those 3 years. Those were my first 3 years of the Cannes Film Festival. 92 was The Best Intentions, the Ingmar Bergman thing directed by Billy August. Then it was a tie between The Piano and Farewell My Concubine, deservedly. And then it was Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
The 90s were something, weren't they?
Something, man,
So just before we dive into everything, what is up with Boots Riley? Why is he getting up in Spike?
Well, for one thing,
I think I know, but it's worth talking about.
So, like a couple of different things going on. For one thing, Boots music, not just music. Boots was actually a film major.
And Boots, or we should point out, Boots had an indie film that got a little bit of heat earlier this year.
And then kind of faded.
And it kind of faded. Yeah. But the thing is, I was thinking about this too, because when Spike's film started getting the heat, I thought, you know what? There's kind of a thing. The Boots Riley film is called
Sorry to Bother You.
Sorry to Bother You. Sorry for yeah. So which is the guy, he's a telemarketer, he's a black guy, and he puts on his white voice, right? And I thought, you know what? That's kind of joined at the hip with Spike's film.
Black Klansman we're talking
It's
about.
kind of joined at the hip with this idea, it's not the comedy gimmick, it's not the sort of very broad gimmick that he's using, but the idea of the person that you meet is not the person you're talking to, or that perception on the phone.
The thing with the phone, Black Klansman, of course, the true story of a black officer in 1970, whatever the hell it was, who infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan via phone, then using his partner, played by Adam Driver, to be the white person who met the Klan in person. In the Boots movie, you have a telemarketer, young black man, who learns to use his white voice.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is a thing with black folks.
Yeah.
Black folks of a certain age, by the way, grow up knowing that you have to learn 2 different languages and 2 different ways to speak. There's the language that you use in the community, and the way we speak in the community, which is completely different than the language that we use in the greater society. Right now, I'm using the language that we use in the greater society. When you're not here and it's just me and Wade or Sherman or somebody like that, there's a whole different brother talking.
I get it.
It's a thing.
And that is also literally true in Haiti.
Yes.
Where in school they speak French, and when they go home they speak Creole.
Or So
and I've met Haitians and spoken to them in proper French, and they kind of think it's cute. They think it's cute and endearing, but they just rather be hitting the Creole. That's a thing, I think, in a lot of places. And
frankly, I think it happens in more cultures than I know that it happens in Asian cultures. Talk to Justin Chang about it, and he's like, believe me, we do that.
I have seen it in my family and my wife's family, where we have parents who grew up in the South who have no Southern accent, but you drop them back into that environment, and that twang is back like that.
You did not want. I was stationed in Fairford outside London for about a year and a half in the early 80s. I got back. I swear to you, everyone said, "Why are you talking with that British accent?"
It's wild,
and it went on. It went on for weeks. It went on for weeks.
So here's my thing. I think Boots is under the impression that Spike has stolen his thunder. His film came out too early in the year,
and I think that Boots thinks that he did it on purpose.
And I think he may, and the films have kind of a similar thing, and I think he feels like all of that award season juice is going to go to Spike instead of him. And if I were giving him advice, I would say this: don't subscribe to this idea, which doesn't exist anymore, that there's a black slot in award season and Spike is going to get it and you're not. That I've seen that with my wife, where
that's
women
acquiescence. That is an acquiescence.
There's this thing in Hollywood where women will literally be more brutal to other women and cannibalize other women because they feel like there are limited spots for women, so they're all in a tighter competition for it. We got to get past that.
Here's the notion: both of these things may have been true to a certain point. I think that we are at a point, and I get in trouble a lot in the black community because I say these things a lot. Sometimes we have to recognize when we've won. Sometimes we have these huge wins, and we keep fighting that battle.
Boots and Spike may both win awards.
Yes,
at the
this
end of
is
the
my
year.
point
They could
exactly.
be at the same events. If they are, you want to be able to walk up and shake hands and go, "Loved your movie, man. Great, I loved yours too." You're not fighting for the same spot.
Because I didn't beat you.
That's it.
I first of all, there are a lot of movies nominated. I beat them all.
That's
Whichever
right.
was who won.
There you go.
So that slot, no. And this is one of these moments, and it's true of a few things now. So this, and I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of what's going on. And frankly, this comes from a couple of guys because neither Boots nor Spike are that young, and they're carrying over a mentality that comes from my generation. Boots and Spike are all in the same age range, 4 or 5 years, and this is some NAACP type mentality. Yeah. And we grew up with it. It gets inculcated into us, and we all end up fighting for this exact same space. And it's kind of like what happened with I think with Steve McQueen and the writer of 12 Years a Slave.
Yes.
And that all happened, right?
Yeah.
And Steve McQueen, and he goes up there, and then here comes it. He's like,
Yeah.
only one of us. Ridley, yeah. It was as if only one of these two black men, one British and one American, could have props for this movie. Yeah. As if they couldn't both stand there. And it got kind of ugly, and it was a little embarrassing.
It's and these are all growing pains. Yeah. I get that, and that's why I think I'm willing to cut people a lot of slack for these things. Like in Boots' case, I'm not ripping on him per se. I understand where he's coming from. Just want him to understand that you don't need to go there. It's okay.
You're not directly in competition with that brother. Now, Spike over the years has said and done some things.
But Spike. Look, we also have to remember too that. Spike came of age at a moment when there had been no films with predominantly black casts and directed by a black filmmaker that had ever gone mainstream. Yeah. It never happened. You'd gone through the blacksploitation era. You had a few things like Sweetback for sure.
Popular films, but not mainstream studio release.
No, I mean even stuff like all the Charles Burnett stuff still lived in a very indie niche. And Spike broke that wall down. He broke it down with muscle, right? I mean, he came in and he talked big and he hit it big. And I think he over the course of his career was under the impression, not incorrectly, that you had to keep being belligerent to some degree to keep, elbowing because otherwise you're going to get elbowed aside. Mm-hmm. And he's never moved past that. And I'm not sure I want him to,
Particularly
when it sort of is who he is.
When it comes to subject matter, absolutely. When it comes to because he had these issues with John Singleton,
Oh, I know.
15th. I mean, really,
remember
the same thing.
I remember the quote.
Same thing.
I didn't get it. It was. I remember the quote even when he said, I didn't get into this business. I got into this business to just make movies and tell stories, not to get chicks and go to parties like some people. Yeah. And I remember thinking, oh, ouch.
Bruh, why are you shanking the homie? Like he didn't do nothing to you because he was dating Tyra Banks at the time. But there was a moment. Yeah. And that's happened a few times across the course of his 30-year career. Yeah. He should be above that.
Yeah.
It's what I'm thinking. He should just simply be above that. Man,
I remember when he got mad and said he'd never go back to Cannes because he should have won.
Yeah.
There are only two people who ever stormed out of Cannes in a tantrum because they didn't win the top prize. Lars von Trier and Spike Lee. Those are the only two.
Wacky company.
Spike, you don't want to be in Lars's company. Let Lars own that crazy space by himself.
What did he win? He didn't win the main prize for Black Klansman. He won the audience.
He won screenplay.
Screenplay.
I think it was screenplay he won. Yeah. It was director or screenplay, or it was one of the two. But it was one of the top prizes.
He was happy about it. But interesting. I hope it don't get ugly.
All right.
Shall we?
Let's jump into this. I'm going to hit some anime right at the top here. Some really, really good stuff. A few things from Section 23 and Sentai, and then some stuff from some big old cool box sets from Funimation. I love these titles. I really do. Sentai has so many shows that are just basically big-eyed, cute women with multicolored hair doing all kinds of heroic things in mystical, semi-feudal environments. Some of them very scantily clad. This may be the best one I have yet seen, and I love the title. It is called Armed Girls Machiavellism. Oh, I'm mispronouncing it again. It's just who does this title? Armed Girls Machiavellism. There it is.
Machiavellism. I don't think that's a word, but
it's not a word. It's not. It's important to point out it's not Machiavellianism. which is what I think they may have meant. But remember, these titles are cooked up, by people who do not speak English as a first language. So Armed Girls Machiavellism, the complete collection. And this is all about the Aichi Coexistence Academy, which is which used to be girls only, and now it's gone co-ed.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's right. And it gets into this really, really weird. There are these really weird kind of prep school politics going on here. It was a little bit mystical. There's a lot of like sword play and that kind of stuff going on. But there's a kind of an initiation thing that gets into a little bit of cross dressing. I won't get you any beyond that. Just know that it's funny and it's just weird and twisted, and the action is great. The animation is terrific, and it's actually a strange amount of bizarre fun. Then there is also No Game, No Life Zero from Sentai, which is absolutely spectacularly beautiful animation, tremendous colors and shading, and it's really very, very innovative, very interesting. This takes place again in kind of a mystical, alternate future, kind of future past, and it's kind of typical hero, Joseph Campbell hero stuff, yes, but with a heavy feminine inflection. But it's just really, really interesting, and I would just check it out for the artwork alone. It's really, really cool. Then we have a double DVD, double Blu-ray set of Aura Battler Dunbine. Don't ask what it means. There's a whole thing goes to it. This is from the people that did Mobile Suit Gundam, and this is all kind of a interdimensional adventure story with primarily centering around this alternate universe area known as Byston Well. And it's a little hard going at the beginning to try to sort of adapt to what's going on here. The narrative is similar in some ways, I would almost say, to Into the Badlands. It has kind of a similar politics.
Oh yeah,
to Into the Badlands.
The series that we love.
Yeah, but it takes it takes a little getting used to figure out the politics of it. Once you're in, it's there's some fun following. And then we got some big old huge box sets here. Twin Star Exorcists. These are all from Funimation now. These are all Blu-ray and DVD combo sets. Twin Star Exorcists is also incredibly well animated. This is a box set that comes prepared for more stuff to put in it. This is volume 1, and then they're gonna, obviously they expect you to get ready for all the rest that are gonna kind of pile into this. So they want to get you set up. They want to get you hooked up for the rest of the other volumes that'll go into the box. And basically this is just about this is kind of like Romeo and Juliet in a post-apocalyptic pre-apocalyptic kind of situation. These are two teenagers who have some kind of prophecy destiny, and they're living in this fantasy world with monsters and all kinds of perils, and it's where their destiny takes them. Again, kind of very Joseph Campbell-y. And then In Another World with My Smartphone, the complete series. This is really interesting because we talk a lot about how smartphones completely rule us now and how they've changed the world and not necessarily for the better. And I find it interesting that they have now literally put that into the title of an anime series, and they're kind of owning it. Again, it's a fantasy thing where there's a hero who is killed and given a chance to resurrect and have a second shot at life, with the cell phone kind of being a part of this entire process. How the cell phone factors in is the weirdest, funniest, freakiest thing I've ever seen. It's so bizarre. I'm not sure you're supposed to laugh at it. It's like if Luke Skywalker were running around with a cell phone. I think they mean to make some kind of a comment about current culture and cell phone culture, but it's just I guess it's a sign of the times. And then the last one, which I'm very, very excited about, Star Blazers 2099. As anybody who knows anything about me will know very quickly, I loved Star Blazers. Still do. I have every episode of Star Blazers, which was otherwise known as Space Cruiser Yamato.
Yep.
The idea that the battleship Yamato was in some, distant future is lifted off of the ocean floor where it was sunk during World War II and turned into a giant spaceship, and now we go out and fight these intergalactic civilizations that are threatening Earth. I lived on those shows. Those were the greatest shows. They made a live action Star Blazers some years ago, which is kind of fun to watch. It never got out of Japan. It's a little bit heavy-handed and a tiny bit too slavish to the animated show, kind of trying to imitate it in too many ways. But still, the franchise really, really holds up. Well, here we are 30 years after the original animated show, and they are bringing it back. And Star Blazers 2099 absolutely beautifully honors the spirit of the original with better animation, equally good writing. Not sure that it's better, but it's doing the same thing. They're just going back to the well, and I got to tell you, you can't really improve on the wheel. They do a great job here. The animation is terrific. This is a wonderful, fabulous box set. Comes with tons and tons of other cool stuff in it. They're expecting you to get Volume 2 at some point, so there's a space in the box for Volume 2 and a booklet. And Star Blazers 2199 is absolutely the goods. It delivers and fires on all cylinders. It delivers the goods completely for anybody who's a fan of the original. So by all means, definitely, if you're a completist and you already have the other sets from way back years ago, which should be on Blu-ray, but they're not, you want to add this to it. It's absolutely a load of fun. So that is our anime.
Gotta love it, gotta love it, gotta love it.
What else we got?
Let's see. Let's do some of the gay cinema, I think. Perhaps, right? From Breaking Glass?
Let's do it.
First one. A neat little film by a fellow named Anthony J. Caruso. Anthony J. Caruso, look him up. He's actually an actor. He's been in a lot of stuff you've been watching. He's one of those guys you've been watching on television for years and years and years. You just don't know his name. Directed 2 films. This is one of them. It's the sort of gay film that's been done before. It's about a guy who has a sort of calling from God to become a sort of brother or something like that. But then he meets a handyman named Gabe, which is a little obvious, and he starts to like Gabe, and he has to figure out what he's going to do. That storyline is perfectly okay with me. Even the acting in this movie is okay with me. This movie is entirely too verbose. Anthony is a little bit in love with his own writing. He's the star of the movie. He's the director of the movie. He wrote the movie, and he likes every word that he wrote, and he leaves them all in the movie. It would have behooved him to have someone say, Anthony, I think we got it. And this, instead of being 2 hours long, would be about 90 minutes long, and it would be a better movie. But it is funny. I will give it that. All kinds of little tributary storylines that go off this way and the other. Special commentary track here from the director and a few other folks, and some alternate takes in the trailer and stuff like that. It's a perfectly acceptable, nice little movie that could use a little trimming. Popped up on a whole lot of film festivals. Brotherly Love by Anthony J. Caruso from Breaking Glass.
Very nice.
And then we have another one of these little films. These films, they go back all the way back to the films like The Incredibly True Adventures of Two Girls in Love from some 20 years ago.
Oh,
this is one, Porcupine Lake, a film about these 2 young girls, really. I think they're 13 or 14 years old in the film, who are both visiting a lake and hanging out, and they become fast friends, and then a little bit more than fast friends. And it's about how they sort of influence each other over the course of this summer. It's just a lovely, sensitive film. Nothing particularly dramatic happens. I like this film more than the film that I just mentioned because it's a quieter film with less talking. And I think it has to do with the fact that this is about 2 young women, whereas that other film was about 2 young men. And this film is directed by a woman as opposed to that film being directed by the guy who actually made it. So anyway, this film is just a little bit more, a little quieter and a little sweeter. And it's exactly the same movie, but it's just done better. Porcupine Lake. Very, very nice. Also from Breaking Glass. I also rather like My Life with James Dean. This is another film from Breaking Glass. And yes, it does have a sort of gay theme, sort of undertone, but it's really a film about a guy who's taking a movie to a film festival in France, to Normandy in France.
Oh, fantastic.
It's a little movie. And it's all about the film festival tour and what that means to him, and what people seeing his movie and responding to his movie and how they interpret his movie. There are all these wonderful scenes where people come up to him after the screening and they tell him all sorts of things about the movie that he made. things that he had no idea were in the context of the movie. And yes, like I said, there's a sort of gay romance in it, but it's just not the point.
It's not about that.
No,
yeah,
no.
it's
And
not
that's
the centerpiece.
and that's why these
good.
films work so good. Dominic Chosey, this wonderful. Anyway, it's more of a tribute to cinema than anything else, and I rather enjoyed it quite a lot. Also from Breaking Glass, Speed Walking. Another film about young teenagers. This one is set in a small town on the outskirts. Set in a small town where there's this 14-year-old boy who's going through one of those transitions. It's all set in about the middle 70s. And again, we have one of these movies about young children, or 14, 15-year-old kids, sort of lingering in the summer, figuring out who they are, and one of them figures out that he's probably gay. And this movie I like a lot because it's about the way his friends react to that. Yep. And they don't react in the typical sort of way, which I think is really interesting because this movie is in fact set in the middle 70s. So neat film, Danish film, by the way. Speed Walking from Breaking Glass. Paths, which is from a TLA releasing, is another film that, yes, has a sort of gay underlying theme, but it's a film that's not about that at all. It's about a couple that's been together for a very, very long time, or a relatively long time, and they have a son that they've raised, and that son has grown up and is now leaving home. And it's about this couple who are actually still, relatively speaking, young, in their 40s or something like that, and how they are dealing with this gay male couple, how they are dealing with the empty nest syndrome. Because you know what? Happens to them too.
Yeah.
The kid's gone. How are we going to be now as a couple when we don't have to worry about that? So, it's a really, really lovely film from TLA releasing. Not a whole lot on it. It's in German with English subtitles. And we also have Paperboys, a film by Curtis Casella and Cal Cabral, both young gay men who make these really, really wonderful films. So this one is about a guy who has a brash decision. He decides to go up to San Francisco, and he pretends to be straight, and he hangs out with his best friends. And as far as they know, he's just this straight guy. But he's simply engaged in this sort of deception. Only he's not really intending to be deceptive. He just wants to be somebody else for a minute. He wants to see what it means to be like a straight guy hanging around with straight guys, doing straight guy stuff.
That's interesting.
And it's a really sort of interesting
gimmick.
kind of.
That's good.
It's a hell of a gimmick. He's like, and it's just funny because we are of course behind his eyes, seeing what he's seen, and how he's sort of silently smiling at the things that these straight guys do. And it's interesting because he decides, you know what, I like being gay better. which I can kind of see. Again, special features include an audio commentary and a few behind-the-scenes looks and stuff like that. This one is from, is it Dekaku?
Deku. Yeah, Deku.
Paperboys. Neat movie.
All right, so got some new movies this week. We will, on the next show, talk about Deadpool, which came to us just too late to be able to squeeze into this show. But we got Show Dogs at the top here, and Show Dogs is not Deadpool 2. Raja Gosnell, who is the auteur behind Beverly Hills Chihuahua and Scooby-Doo, decided, I'm going to go make a dog movie again, another talking dog movie. So he made Show Dogs.
They don't get enough of those.
Now I happen to know.
I have issues.
I know. Now, in full disclosure, I know some of the people involved in the production of this. I know one of the producers quite well. I know another producer somewhat well, and I can't even feign like, oh, go see it. No, it's and they wouldn't either. They know this is a lame movie. It's a junk movie. Look, Will Arnett has a dog that talks like Ludacris, and they're detectives. There it is. That's the movie. There's nothing else. Come on, Ludacris, what's the deal? And he's going by Chris, in quotes, Ludacris because Bridges now. He's trying to do the thing like Dwayne Johnson.
The way the Rock eventually went away.
Yeah, when they've got the moniker for wrestling or rapping or whatever else it is that you do, eventually they kind of want to go legit, so they got to kind of get their actor name going.
And you know what's funny? I watched an episode of Star Trek Voyager last night.
Yeah.
And it's an episode in which 7 of 9 and Dwayne, The Rock Johnson, are fighting in this whole thing. I'm looking at them, I'm like, oh my God, that's The Rock. And I wait, and his credit in that episode is Dwayne Johnson. But he was The Rock back then. But his credit, so it's funny. He's gone full circle. Yeah. He had to become The Rock so that he could become Dwayne Johnson again.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
And that's just wild.
Crazy. Well, anyway, so Show Dogs, it's on, it's movies anywhere, it's Blu-ray, DVD, it's if you love talking dogs, whatever. The Miracle Season is on DVD. This is a triumphant sports movie. It's perfectly fine. It's based on a true story about a volleyball team.
Yeah, a little heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's it's a girls' high school volleyball team, and their star player dies. William Hurt plays the dad. Helen Hunt plays the coach, and they've got to somehow rally the team to in the memory of the dead girl to kind of triumph. And it works. It does exactly what you expect it's going to do for a sports film. Volleyball is not as interesting as contact sports like soccer and football and basketball, where you can get some real drama going. It's you're separated by a net, and it's not quite the same thing. However, could say the same thing about tennis. And my favorite film of the year so far is Borg versus McEnroe,
which bugs me that movie did not.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I just don't get that. I just don't get it.
By the way, as long as we're on the subject, so I watched the John McEnroe documentary, which I have to cover on Film Week next week.
Next week, okay, yeah.
Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
It is amazing because it's not a documentary about McEnroe. It's a documentary about cinema.
Oh.
It's amazing. I'm just going to tell everybody this really quickly. I didn't know what to expect. It starts off with a quote by Jean-Luc Godard, of all damn things. And you know me, I'm like, I can respect Godard, but I just as soon punch him in the face for being such a pretentious dork. But the quote is, cinema is all lies. Sports doesn't lie, right? Which is true. And there's a very famous French tennis player and sports documentarian who made all these kind of tennis training films way back in the day, who for years was set up at the clay courts during the French Open to just shoot film. But he's not shooting, and he shot years and years and hundreds of hours of McEnroe from his little hole, and is secluded, and it's all it's all insulated, so that because McEnroe kept complaining about the sound of the 16mm camera going zzz, it drove him nuts. And there's even footage of him yelling at him saying, "Get that mic out of my face," which is hysterical. But what he does is he just puts the camera on McEnroe. And he's learning all of the things, like this is how you win a Grand Slam. You don't learn about how McEnroe wins by watching McEnroe and the other player. You learn from just watching McEnroe. And so you're watching very often just one side of the match. But it's fascinating. It's as a tennis player and a tennis fan, you will find this is so interesting.
Because McEnroe, of course, would be. There's a wonderful documentary called The French from 1982.
Yeah,
it's about the French Open.
Yeah,
McEnroe plays him and Borg, because that was they had that big gigantic thing, and young Yannick Noah, and were all behind the scenes of all of that.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful film. I think it's William Klein or something like that. Because it's all ambient sound.
Yeah.
Right? There's no voiceover, no narrator. It's just nothing but the sound of the French Open. And very often it's McEnroe going bananas. And very often it's him screaming at the guy that you're talking about who's shooting in that little hole.
The most interesting observation here is that McEnroe was not just an expert at the drama of how to finish a point with those drop shots and all that, nobody ever knowing where he was going to hit the ball, and all of his little deceptive things that, Andre Agassi eventually did as well. But he was a master at how to start the point. Those tantrums, those tirades dictated the temperament and the tenor of every given point before he even served. Anybody served. He set the tone.
He was controlling the tone. He was controlling the pace.
He's the Bobby Fischer of tennis.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
He was playing chess. All right, great. I have to see that one.
Yes. So American Animals. Bart Layton, who's a director I've never heard of before, but does a very, very good job with this really interesting offbeat heist film, which is about heisting rare books from a library.
I had issues with that movie. Did you happen to hear me on the radio show about that movie?
I didn't. What were your issues?
True story.
Yeah.
Right. They these boys in 2000, whatever it is, young guys, steal the John Audubon book. Right?
Yeah.
And in doing so, this all happened in Kentucky. Now these were sort of like upper middle class young men. At universities, one kid is like on the lacrosse team, the other kid is like a budding artist, and yet they're engaged in all of this sort of angst about their future. Angst about,
which never quite comes off.
No,
I agree with that.
And frankly, I'm looking at these, and they decide to pull off this heist, and they actually do this thing. Here's the thing: there's a woman, and this is all true story, with whom they use a cattle prod sort of like shocking device, and they shock her and knock her out so that they can pull off this heist. All right, now the thing about this movie is the actual guys who did this are in this movie.
Yeah,
they cut to these guys and they're sort of telling the story as we go back and forth
in Red's fashion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now the actors playing them in the movie are all very good, by the way, wonderfully acting and all this kind of stuff. But when we cut to these guys, the actual guys, this is what I realized. These guys are assholes. These guys are still assholes.
Yep.
And they are still wholly unaware of how disgusting what they did are.
True.
They and thus the filmmakers seem to be unaware of it too.
You think? See, now I thought the filmmaker was aware of it.
You tell me.
I got the impression that this was sort of give them enough rope.
And they will hang themselves.
Yeah,
you know? Yeah.
That was what that was my takeaway. But you may be right. Maybe there's an obliviousness to it as well. I thought it was certainly a very interesting way to tell this story. Certainly something that has been done before. But I thought
because
interesting
it comes
tack.
close to I, Tonya, because Tanya Harding and Galooly. And all
they
those people
clearly
pop up
they're very aware of how ridiculous.
But the filmmakers are very aware that these people are all lying.
Yes.
In I, Tonya. And that rope you're talking about, they definitely just here's your rope, here's your rope. But I'll have to consider that. But that was an interesting thing about it. Well,
there's a commentary on this as well, which is also where I got the very clear impression that they are not as enamored of these people as might appear. It's a very interesting commentary, not as forthcoming as you might hope. Also has some deleted scenes and featurettes. And Woman Walks Ahead with Jessica Chastain and Sam Rockwell is good. I wish it was better.
Yeah.
I'm kind of Hostiles got inside my skin.
Yeah,
that was my favorite film of last year, and that this is kind of in the same territory, but just doesn't hit it as hard. Nonetheless, love all these actors. Basically, Jessica Chastain it's a true story. Goes to paint the portrait of Sitting Bull, who is played very well by Michael Greyeyes. And Sam Rockwell is the U.S. Army officer who's kind of not down with the whole situation and not down with the native peoples, and plays his usual kind of jerky self very, very well. But nonetheless, beautifully made, beautifully shot, very well directed. Susanna White does a great job directing it, and gives a wonderful audio commentary as well. Nonetheless, it just doesn't have the same impact as something like Hostiles. Which just
deeply brutal, but also very emotional.
Yeah.
Upgrade. Right. I like this movie. Upgrade, which kind of blew me away because it sort of looked like one of those high concept-y sort of movies, but but it was kind of neat, and it has an energy to it. And once it gets going, man, it does not stop. Anyway, there's this guy. His wife is killed. He's left paralyzed. It's set slightly in the future, and there's this way that one can simply repair their bodies, and they can get. But it's not just a matter of repairing your body. Yeah. You get upgrades. You can do stuff now that you couldn't do before, and he decides to figure out who killed his wife.
Nice.
And use those skills to get him there, and it's just a really, really neat concept. It's like a sort of Charles those Bronson movies back in the day. Where Charlie Bronson would go after it was like that,
right?
Only in a high-tech, high-concept kind of way. Really, really kind of neat. From the producers of Get Out and Happy Death Day and The Purge, they make sure to sort of mention that on the box. But they didn't really need to because it's a pretty good movie all by itself. Nothing on this sucker in the way of special features, though, which is kind of buggy to me because it's the kind of movie where you really wish that they had gone behind the scenes a little bit and talked about. Yeah.
So here's an odd little indie, The House of Tomorrow. Excuse me, with Asa Butterfield, who has become the go-to actor for playing just weird young kids. Born on Mars or Ender's Game or whatever it is. That's his gig. So he plays the weird kids, and he does it very, very well. I wish he'd kind of stop doing it though, because I keep I'm like comparing all of the different parts in my head. Like, which one of the weird Asa Butterfield parts was weirder than the others? Anyway, here he's a 16-year-old kid who has spent basically his entire life living in a geodesic dome with his grandmother, played by Ellen Burstyn, who also has been playing a lot of weird parts in the last few years. And it's the whole thing is the metaphor for coming. It's the same thing as in that Martian Kid movie, where how do you come out of your world? How do you enter this new world? How do you? It's just a big kind of counterculture coming of age metaphor. And it kind of works. The way that Buckminster Fuller is integrated into this, and if you don't know who Buckminster Fuller was,
geodesic dome dude.
Yeah, that's what gets a little bit. It's a little twee. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like if you're going to go to a sort of fringe topic, it would help to make it accessible to audiences who don't sort of understand the history of the fringiness, as opposed to doubling down on the fringiness and just saying we're gonna get Buckminster Fuller in this, and we're gonna make all these references to things that you need to go home and look up. If I gotta go home and look up a bunch of stuff, I'm not really enjoying the movie.
I'm not going to.
No,
your movie's going to play to a very very, very particular audience. The book club, I should say, Diane Keaton, Jane Fonda, Candice Bergen, Mary Steenburgen, all of them ladies that I have had gigantic crushes on over the course of the last 35 or 40 years, still do. And they are good in this movie. This movie isn't all that good, but they are individually quite good in this movie. So it's a movie about these ladies of a certain age who all decide to read 50 Shades of Grey. You know, the movie for which the books from which the 50 Shades of Grey movies are made, and what that means to rekindling their sort of sexual desire and love lives, and the people they meet. The people they meet include Andy Garcia and Don Johnson and Craig T. Nelson and Richard Dreyfuss, all of whom are pretty cool, and you can't get enough of. It's strange though. I look at these guys who were like icons of my life, right? And I wanted to be Don Johnson. And now he's playing like, middle-aged dude, hunting down Diane Keaton. But you know what? I guess that happens to all of us. All kinds of stuff on this movie. Again, it's in the vein of those sort of movies. You know what's weird about these movies, Wade? They're never as good as the equivalent of this movie in an English film, a British film.
It's true.
Would be better.
Yeah.
First Marigold, blah, 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 whatever it is.
Yeah.
The exact same thing would be better. We end up with a Nancy Meyers film. Of some sort, or a film like this, and and they're okay, but they're just never as good as the English ones who are literally doing the same thing. I don't know about you, but I've been waiting to get Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren together in the movie. I don't even know, man. I've been thinking about it. I wrote letters, and finally, the good folks at Lionsgate have done it. Jean-Claude and Dolph in a movie called Blackwater. You got Jean-Claude Van Damme, who's being held by the CIA in a black site on a submarine under the water.
That's it. That's all I need to know.
And, hey, that's it, right? Unfortunately, they've decided to do this while Dolph Lundgren is a prisoner on the same submarine. Yeah. You don't want to do that. So Dolph and Jean-Claude decide that they're going to break out of that black site and off of that submarine, and sure enough, they do. Hey, man, if you had told me that movies like this still had a life, I would have, but they do. People love these movies, and people love these guys, and they go see these movies. So Blackwater, Jean-Claude and Dolph.
So Higher Power, you can learn a lot from the existence of this movie. This is from Magnolia via their genre line of Magnet. This is on a Blu-ray set. So here's the thing. This is from producer Lorenzo Di Bonaventura, who was a big cheese over at Warner Brothers once upon a time. Did a lot of big movies over there, and he's now independent, making getting his own movies financed. And when you do those kinds of when you're an independent producer, when you're not a studio, and you put a movie like this together, and a big studio does not pick it up, you're kind of stuck. Now you're into straight to video territory. And that's kind of where these movies live now, and it's called Higher Power. The tagline on this is just, the power to save the world or to end it. What does that mean? The power to save the world or to end it?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a mad scientist movie, basically, a guy and his family, and it reminds me a lot of the fourth season of The Flash, which we're gonna talk about shortly as well. But where you're dealing with somebody who's just, how do you overcome somebody who's almost godlike in their power and their knowledge? It's kind of silly. We've seen that many, many times before. It's usually a computer. In this case, it's just a mad scientist. And lots of special effects, loads of special effects. And that's how they plug this thing, from the producer of Transformers and G.I. Joe and the visual effects artist of 300, Fantastic Four, and X-Men Origins. Let me explain something to you. Transformers is a terrible movie. G.I. Joe is a terrible movie. 300, I know a lot of people like it. I hate 300. Fantastic Four, well, which terrible version of it? And then X-Men Origins, okay, fair enough. I liked X-Men Origins, but just because you got the special effects guy from X-Men Origins, this is not a selling point.
No.
I'm not looking at those going, Oh wow, that's sure. I'll go. No,
no. I didn't even do that when I watched X-Men Origins.
no,
I didn't care who the effects guy was on X-Men Origins. What the hell do I care?
No.
John Cameron Mitchell, man, when he hit the scene back with Hedwig,
he kind of peaked.
Yeah, you know,
he's had a hard time. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's a very uneven filmmaker.
Yeah,
I love Hedwig. And I think Rabbit Hole is one of the best films of the past 15 years.
Short bus, of course, between those two was more definitively sort of a sort of gay, experimental sort of thing, and that was fine with me, particularly right after Hedwig. And then a lot of television in there too. I mean, Glow, Gordon, and some of that kind of stuff. And he acts a lot too, Mozart in the Jungle and all that. But that directing career, which I thought was that was 2001. Hedwig.
I know.
Sort of, became a more ordinary sort of thing. And thus we have this film, How to Talk to Girls and Go to Parties, Elle Fanning and Alex Sharp, and a pop-up by Nicole Kidman, in a film that should, with that sort of a cast and John Cameron Mitchell, should have been a little bit more noted, but was not, because it's really not that good. It is a quirky film, and that's what you just said. It's just incredibly uneven. Set in 1977 London, the movie is about a bunch of young aliens who come to London, to Earth, to engage in a rite of alien passage, and they meet these human children, and who don't know that they're aliens.
Kind of lost me already.
And then you see what I mean?
Yeah,
right there. And I can see why John Cameron would think that was cute and funny. It's sort of androgynous and has a sort of man who fell to Earth sort of dynamic. Bowie and all of that kind of stuff meets London pops. But no, it just doesn't work. Doesn't work at all. And I don't know, John Cameron, he's doing well as an actor. This does have an audio commentary from him with actors Elle Fanning and Alex Sharp, and a making of sort of documentary and some deleted scenes.
Kind of a sort of late life coming of age movie called Escape, or The Escape. This is with Gemma Arterton. So here's the deal. Gemma Arterton is if you can believe it or not, she deglams herself to play sort of a beleaguered London housewife. Dominic Cooper is her husband, and her life isn't all it's cracked up to be. So she decides to escape.
Yeah, she almost goes on a bit of a walkabout, really.
That's it. That's all it is. Yeah. And it's really nicely acted. I love Gemma Arterton, who of course starred in Their Finest, which I thought was the best of the Dunkirk movies. Got no love because of dumb things that I won't get into. This is perfectly fine. Dominic Savage is the writer-director. It's a lovely film. I don't think it's a great film, but I'm glad that it's out there. It's from IFC Films on DVD, not on Blu-ray.
Neatly emotional little number.
All right, let's hit some documentary. I'm jumping the gun here on this. Some television, and I'm going to start off with Documentary Now. That's where my head was. Documentary Now, if you haven't seen this, is like some of the greatest television of the last 20 years. It's completely bit funny, as Tim would often say.
Yes.
It's very, we're talking about sketch comedy people here, basically. So this is the brainchild of Bill Hader and Fred Armisen, both of them looking to kind of bust out some things that they weren't able to fully explore on SNL.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those is to basically do a kind of mock documentary comedy show. And what Documentary Now does, and this is quote unquote hosted by Helen Mirren to give it that very officious British sense of authenticity. And she keeps a straight face too. It's absolutely a beautiful thing. It's just a wonder to watch her be completely straight on this. But every episode is like a different, stylistically perfect riff on some other documentary, a great documentary, a documentary style, whatever the case is. It's just all mock documentary and faux documentary. And if you've ever seen any of the stuff like what's the mock Loch Ness movie?
Oh yes,
with the Peter Jackson. It's that kind of thing. It's hysterical. And once you get and if you're a documentary fan and you know the references and you can kind of spot, okay, now they're doing a Grey Gardens on me and all this kind of stuff. When you know that, it just absolutely rips you to pieces. It's so unbelievably funny. And the guest stars are just through the roof. Not just people from SNL. There are plenty of those, but there are people that just come in from left field, and it's absolutely a stone cold riot. I think this is just so funny and so much fun. You got to see a Documentary Now! ! Fred Armisen and Bill Hader doing it.
Get Shorty, the television series, inspired by the Elmore Leonard Look, I read that novel in 1990.
Yep.
And then of course there was the Get Shorty movies, and
Sure.
whatever the other one was. about with Shirley.
There
were two of those.
With Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, with Dwayne Johnson,
where he does the pants and
the
the whole
thing in the pants. All that. And first Get Shorty movie pretty good, not as good as the book. Second Get Shorty movie, Get Shorty movie or sequel to Get Shorty movie, still not as good as the book. This series, definitely not as good as the book, but as much fun, way more fun than that second movie. You got Crystal Dowd and Ray Romano in this, and we have the first complete season here. So I don't know. It's not up there with the best crime sort of comedy drama noir that one can watch, but it's kind of funny with these guys doing this stuff. Melissa McCarthy and a few other people show up on it. All kinds of special features on here. But, I don't know. You got to kind of be into the Get Shorty stuff. This is a 3-dish set. The complete first season, Get Shorty.
So we got a couple of superhero things here, and mixed feelings about both of them. Both of them in their 4th seasons. So Gotham in its 4th season, where we're starting to get to the whole Batman thing. That's right. That's right. Where Bruce Wayne is kind of going in that direction, and Ra's al Ghul, and we got the Riddlers showing up, and Penguin, and everything. It's all kind of going in the right direction. You feel the momentum there. You feel this series getting ready to kind of wrap out. And but the thing is, this show never had a lot of momentum for me. The 4th season, I'm going to say this, 4th season is better than the 3rd season, which is better than the 2nd, which is better than the 1st.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a slow burn, man. It's slow to get to that 4th season, and I almost gave up on the first season after the 1st season. I was like, this isn't working for me.
The thing that happens along the course of the seasons of Gotham is that the show gets a little darker and more brutal.
Yes.
It starts taking people out, and characters take individual turns.
Yes, they do.
Sort of, it's not Flash.
No, it isn't, which is what I'm going to hit in a second.
What you're about to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I like I really like in this season what they do with Poison Ivy. I thought that's a nice change from what we've seen in the movies, and certainly even in some of the comic books. But meanwhile, we have Flash over here in its 4th season. The Flash in its 4th season, I truly feel my relationship to the Flash is much like the relationship that a lifelong heroin addict has to smack. And
you love it, but you hate it.
Because I binge watch these things, and then I think I've kicked the addiction, and I'm like, now I'm going to get back to a normal life. And then another one comes around, and I fall right off the wagon, and I'm back in. And damn it, it's Barry and Iris and that whole family thing, and it's just, and here's the thing. Over the course of 4 seasons, a show that started off being about one guy who's a superhero, basically everybody on the show now is a superhero.
Yeah.
Everybody on the show, except for Dad.
Yeah.
Dad and is the only one that's not technically a superhero or hasn't played a superhero in some way.
It's that once they set
even
off that
Iris, even Iris has her superhero moment in this. It's like
she gets to see what it's like to be Barry.
Yeah, it's just. And here's the thing: what's refreshing about this 4th season is also what's weak about the 4th season. And I know where they're going to go in the 5th season, and they're going to go right back to the well. But we've been about fighting speedsters, increasingly evil speedsters, and more powerful speedsters.
And all that, yeah.
In every single of one of the first 3 seasons, and they're all from the comics.
Yeah.
Here we now have a villain, the Thinker, which is also from the comics, but not a speedster. He is so smart that he has his floating chair, and he's smarter, and he knows what everyone's going to do before they do it, and it's a big chess match, and how do you defeat him in the chess match? And ultimately, it doesn't really make any sense what they do. They just get to the last episode. They get to episode 22, and they got to end it somehow. So
every Flash. The reason why I love the Flash is because no matter what is going on in the Flash, no matter what characters, there's only one thing going on in the Flash. Barry is in love with Iris.
That's it.
And what nothing's going to happen to Iris. He will save. He'll do it, but nothing is going to happen because Barry is bananas about Iris. That's it. I mean, the whole thing about the mother and finding out that was this sort of driving storyline for a long time. But even that, at the end of the day, was just a MacGuffin because they were waiting for Barry to admit that he was in love with Iris.
I won't go into all of the other subplots that keep coming back. Killer Frost and and what's his face oh gosh,
which one?
You would think I would know all the characters by now. Cisco.
Oh,
Cisco's relationship with what's her
Oh,
face,
yes,
and then
with angry with
and then
that's
we
her dad.
that all that stuff. It's and then the fact that we got two other speedsters in here, in Iris's brother, who's Kid Flash, and then Jesse Quick.
Yeah.
Well, we can't. It's only one Flash, so we got to figure out excuses to make them go away for a few episodes and occasionally come back when we need them. That bugs me, but you know what? I can't let this show go.
I don't even try. I
can't let it go.
I don't even try. It's just because I'm like, every time somebody kidnaps Iris, I'm like, uh-oh. Shouldn't have done that, homie. Should have kidnapped Iris. That's the only time they go wrong.
It's
you
true.
Kidnap Iris.
So
don't
true.
do that. You might win.
Yeah.
The bear is gonna kick your ass now.
Yep.
Ash versus the Evil Dead. So this series is set 30 years after The Evil Dead, which is, kind of interesting to me because I don't even think it's been about 30 years since The Evil Dead, so they kind of keep it in real time.
Yeah.
And Ash has been sort of like hiding out and everything kind of, and we're into the third season now. And I like the third season because, to be honest with you, I didn't care for the first season of this because Bruce Campbell, he's got the belly and he's putting on. They're sort of playing all the it's been 30 years jokes. And I'm like, that's Bruce Campbell. I don't care for these jokes. For one thing, he's like 2 years younger than me. But by the time we get to the third season, Bruce has leaned out and manned up, and he's got that chainsaw hand, and he's got Kelly and that other dude running with him. And you know what they're doing? They're messing up and now we're into the movie that I love. Now we got the movie where a homie is talking crap and taking names.
Yep.
And so by the time you get to the third season, this is much more like the series of movies.
Yep.
Evil Dead and
sure.
all that kind of stuff. A lot more fun. Special features, season overview, inside the world of Ash versus the Evil Dead, and a whole bunch of audio commentaries.
Got a couple from Mill Creek here. A couple of complete series that have now made their way to the Mill Creek Blu-ray complete series line, which means usually that the individual series have played out, and Mill Creek is going to offer an affordable box set for people who missed it the first time around. Both of these are worth checking out. I like one better than the other. Masters of Sex, the complete series, actually ages pretty well with time, to be honest. Michael Sheen, who has gone on to be a really, really terrific actor in so many great movies, is really, really great in this. So is Lizzie Kaplan, who's also gone on to be really terrific. Now You See Me Too, probably the best thing in that. This is really quite an interesting look at a particular moment in time. The whole, Masters and Johnson study, which sort of came on the heels of Kinsey studying human sexuality and how that changed society and all of that. And it's a good show. It really is a good show. 4 seasons is all you need, and it's in a box set from Mill Creek. Mill Creek also has a 3-season box set on Blu-ray, Happy Endings, which I'm less fond of. It's fun, it's funny, it's a little fluffy. It doesn't quite hit the high marks that a lot of other shows do. Certainly isn't in the same caliber as Masters of Sex, but it's got a great cast. Damon Wayans Jr., who looks just like his freaking dad, which is just unbelievable. Adam Pally, Eliza Coupe, Zachary Knighton. These are all really, really, Elisha Cuthbert. These are all very, very talented actors, and they have a lot of fun with this. So, it's kind of like, even the artwork references Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice a little bit.
Yes,
it's just, it's like 30-something meets Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice in the present day. Touch of Friends, it's all that stuff.
The Terror, first complete season, was an actually very, very creepy a series that combines some history, some real life history about a ship called it was a Royal Navy expedition ship known as USS Terror. There were 2 ships actually, and they were sent to find the fabled Northwest Passage, and they actually left in about 1847, not 1848 when the series is set. But there are reasons for that. Nevertheless, they do this. They get hemmed in by ice flows in the winter, and they find themselves trapped near the Arctic, but trapped nonetheless. The next thing you know, they're being hunted by a gigantic predator. Now, it doesn't give anything away to say that the predator in the series is a giant polar bear. It's a polar bear.
Yep.
And it's hunting them down and it's killing them. Now, the series then does something kind of interesting. This is where we start to weave in stuff that didn't actually happen, because it kind of goes a little bit supernatural. And it gets very dark and sort of very gothic. And now we're in sort of like Frankenstein Dracula territory, set at in the Arctic, near the Arctic Circle, with polar bears eating people, and then eventually we get to the cannibalism. We gotta get to the cannibalism. But it's a hell of a first complete season. It's very beautifully done, very beautifully shot. Special features include a look at the characters and a little bit of discussion of the actual history of the thing. And Ridley Scott is one of the producers of this, and Ridley has a particular way with these kinds of things. So it's good stuff, beautifully acted, wonderfully done.
Nice. So I'm going to hit some CBS stuff here, and while we're on the subject, Les Moonves, that kind of went away for a moment, but there's an investigation going on. We'll see what comes of that. But the whole Paramount CBS thing seems to be crumbling rather quickly. That said, CBS has a very particular kind of cop show that they do, very particular kind of procedural. And we got it in spades here.
It's a little industry.
It's an industry.
It's an industry.
These shows are all basically the same. So we've got now on the heels, and this was a thing. Look, Dick Wolf started this nonsense with Law and Order. Hey, I think I'll do a second, maybe a third, maybe a fourth. Let's do 5 Law and Order shows. Let's just have them all intersect.
Yeah.
And he does that now with the Chicago shows, doing basically the same thing. Which I think works better with the Chicago shows.
And it really was him because when I think about the Bochco shows, they were all actually different shows. I mean, they were cop shows, but they were different cop shows.
It was after
Hill Street Blues. Is not NYPD Blues.
CSI went and did it too, but CSI didn't do it until Law and Order turned it into a cottage industry, right? And then we're like, well, we can do some multiple CSIs, and then now there's a CSI everywhere. So the next one to do that was NCIS. I don't know why we need so many NCISs, but I guess we do. So the original NCIS, Naval Criminal Investigative Service,
which seems so specialized.
It's so specialized. So, but I guess wherever there's a city that there can be an NCIS. Next, we're gonna have like NCIS Topeka. Really? Isn't Topeka landlocked? Why would there be Navy people in Topeka? Shut up. Just go with it. So NCIS, the original one, in its 15th season. Mark Harmon, you are no wonder Pam Dauber doesn't need to work. My goodness, he just rakes it in. So 15th season, it's all the same, man. There's like stuff on here with Joe Spano, who was of course an old Bochco guy as well. Mark Harmon. I mean, I'm glad these people are working, but my gosh,
I can't get through them anymore.
No,
and I was a fan of the early ones.
And and then of course by now we're also into season 9 of NCIS Los Angeles. Which is
that the LL Cool J and
and Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah, Sherman did a couple of those.
I'm thrilled that LL and Chris are able to make their boat payments and their mortgage payments and all that. I know LL is very proud of the fact that his father-in-law loves the fact that his daughter lives in a big old 10,000 square foot house
out there.
I'm thrilled. I'm happy for him, but I think both of them are better actors and can do some better work. But you know what? NCIS, ride that pony until it dies. I say.
O'Donnell's got about 15 kids, so he should stay your ass at work.
and then in its 4th season is the latest one, NCIS New Orleans. And NCIS New Orleans, who knew? Wasn't there a show in New Orleans for a minute that Cool J was in, or somebody else was in?
Yeah, somebody was. It was Gary Sinise, I think.
Maybe
was that the one new, or was that?
No, that's a CSI.
That's a CSI. See you there? You can't even do it. Because there was one with Lawrence Fishburne and.
Well, anyway, so Scott Bakula stars in this because Scott Bakula has always got to be on a TV show,
and he can do that Louisiana accent.
Yeah, look, Scott. I like Scott Bakula, but he's been on TV shows for 35 years.
Quantum Leap. Bridget was in Quantum Leap.
I didn't know
played
that.
Anita Hill in Quantum Leap.
Oh, that's right. I did know that actually.
1995.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, lots of stuff on this. I love Scott Bakula, but it's not substantially different from the others. And then the last one is NCIS Criminal Minds. I'm sorry. Just Criminal Minds. I got carried away there. It certainly feels like it. Criminal Minds in season 13, another part of the CBS empire, and of course this is just profilers, but it's pretty much the same deal. Joe Mantegna, he's been off the market for a while too. All these great actors just doing TV, but you know what? Ride it, just keep riding it. A lot of great actors in here, but really you watch this for Joe Mantegna because he's just always great. And there's not a whole lot of great profiling going on here anymore. It's just procedural stuff. It's the same as the NCIS shows.
Well, it's all just the reductions of the sort of science now is all they really do, and then they stand around and tell you things that you just
it's
not
know.
Columbo. I'm sorry, give me any episode of Columbo, or and I won't even the cowboy on the horse, Dennis Weaver.
Yeah.
Give me any McLeod. Give me any episode of McLeod or Columbo will crush.
Yeah.
Any episode of any one of those shows.
Mannix.
Give me a Mannix. You know,
Kojak.
You know, and
Starsky and Hutch.
Just forget about it. You know?
I just found out that someone I don't know if you know him. He's a friend of Henry Sheehan's that met through Film Week. Who you know, he teaches at a college, teaches graphic design and stuff. Just found out he lives in the same building with Paul Michael Glaser.
Oh, get the hell out!
I asked him. I said, "Does he pull the Torino into the parking structure?"
That orange Torino.
Yeah,
oh man, that was
very exciting.
But I'm sorry, you know, better stuff.
I'm gonna go stalk that building.
Better stuff, dude. Yeah. Better stuff. Blindspot, which falls into the same pocket of the shows that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Third complete season here. Of course, this is the show about the young woman who shows up out of nowhere. Her whole body is covered in these bioluminescent tattoos.
Yeah.
Which over the course of the first 2 seasons, they are sort of decoding and is leading them to this, that, and the other thing.
Yep.
Third season, they figure out what the hell's going on with the tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they answered the central question of the series. This is what's up with the tattoos. This is what they mean. This is what they tell us. And this is where, you know what? Series is over.
Yeah.
But they don't know it. So they keep making more series. And I get it. Everybody wants to make more money. But, dude, I really wish that they would a lot of these series would be better. The money notwithstanding. I get the money. But the series would be better if they would come in knowing where they want to end.
I agree.
And then they could cut a blazing straight path.
Which Lost did not do.
Yeah. Right? And thus you end up with these sort of... Anyway, Blindspot would fall into that category for me. It does include never-before-seen deleted scenes and a gag reel and all kinds of other stuff. Interesting. That all kinds of... I would have never thought, given the schedules of television, particularly network television, that you would end up with a whole lot of deleted scenes.
No.
You wouldn't think so, right?
No,
because these things, they used to be timed out, man. Very, very particularly,
So you've got a very interesting second season of Hostages here. This is an Israeli show that I guarantee you is going to be remade into an American series at some point, just like the Showtime thing.
Oh, the one set in
the national security thing.
I know the one you're talking about.
Homeland.
Homeland. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Which was a German show, I think, or something.
It was Israeli.
I think that was Israeli. Yes,
yeah, Homeland was Israeli. So just like Homeland, we're going to get Hostages at some point. I guarantee you, because it's a really good show, but it won't be as good as the original. This is in Hebrew and English. This is the second season. It's a really sharp show, and as you might judge from the title of the show, it is about hostages and hostage negotiation and SWAT teams and all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting. It's super psychological, more so than Criminal Minds, believe it or not. And it really, really well-developed characters. It's very, very interesting. And the fact that it takes place in Israel gives it this added sort of sense of heft and jeopardy and the regional issues. It's really a fascinating show. So look for, I wouldn't say watch it right now because it's as good as you're ever going to see this show, but it will be remade here at some point.
For sure. Third complete season of Lucifer. I am a fan of Lucifer. I watched Lucifer. I'll just say it right here, right now. Based on the series of books by I think it was Neil Gaiman. I guess it was Neil Gaiman. But sort of created for pop television. And I got to tell you, it's a lot of fun. Lucifer, of course, is the story of actual Lucifer, fallen angel. He's here in Los Angeles, where he runs a nightclub and is a charismatically charming guy who's engaged in all of the things that Lucifer. But the notion in the series, in the series Lucifer, the books in the television series, is that Lucifer is actually a cool guy, and that it's God who has the bad attitude. That Lucifer isn't remotely evil at all, and it is God.
That'll play well in the Deep South.
Who makes him punish people for things that, frankly, Lucifer you wouldn't mind at all. It's really, really a funny series, very sexy, with a neat cast. It went away, and they held one of those campaigns to bring it back. I don't know if that campaign was successful or not. This is the third complete season, might be the last, so you might want to get it.
Yeah, I hear that. And then last of the TV, before we get into some classic movies and wrap this out, Season 5 from Cinemax, the series Strike Back. This is on Blu-ray. And as long as we're talking about, SWAT-type stuff, the thing that Cinemax tried to do was say, we're not Showtime, we're not HBO, so we're going to be a little bit more kind of action-oriented, but we're going to be tougher than what you get on CBS. Mm-hmm. So you get this Commando show, Strike Back, which... isn't bad. I don't think it's anything. It doesn't mean to be anything other than just straight up action. The plots aren't particularly interesting, and the characters aren't. I mean, the acting is pretty wooden, but you know what? It's got great sound. This is still part of HBO and Ultraviolet, so that hasn't made the transition over to Movies Anywhere yet. Not quite sure why, but just the same, there's a lot to enjoy in this, and I can't I can't recommend it as an action show, but the sound, the picture, as a dramatic show, but the sound, the picture, the action, all that is really really good. So quickly getting into some classic films, we've got a wonderful, wonderful bunch of studio classics from Kino, plus one that's an interesting little anomaly. But the studio classic stuff from Kino is a great suite this month. Movies that if you came out of the 80s and 90s, you probably forgot that a lot of these movies existed, and they are really, really worth rediscovering. Daryl Hannah, Keith Carradine, Moira Kelly, and Vincent Spano in The Tie That Binds.
Yeah.
You remember this?
Oh yeah.
Wesley Strick, who was and still is kind of a big deal screenwriter, wrote a lot of stuff, including the Martin Scorsese version of Cape Fear.
Mm-hmm.
He directed this, The Tie That Binds, which is very much a again, it's from the producers of The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. That's the tagline here, because they want you to understand this is another one of those kinds of movies, and it is. It's like a little bit Cape Fear, a little Hand That Rocks the Cradle, stalkery, thrillery. But it's good. It's solid, and Daryl Hannah's terrific. The Day After, which we all remember, was set all kinds of crazy records on television. Nicholas Meyer directed the atomic bomb television movie that scared the daylights.
It was quite a thing. It was a serious
television
production.
It's funny looking back on it how it freaked everybody out. But it's still 1983. It was a legendary moment in television, and
that's before the wall came down, dude.
A lot of it was hype. That's true.
Yeah.
It was before the wall, so a lot of it was hype. But it was it's a moment in television, and it's terribly well done. Especially for TV movies of that time. John Lithgow and Jo Beth Williams, Jason Robards, really, really good cast. Also, The Inkwell, Matty Rich, who just disappeared. But Matty Rich was a thing for a moment.
Yeah,
this is the movie that introduced Lorenz Tate. And this was kind of in that, like we were talking about earlier, Spike sort of opened the door for a lot of black filmmakers. And Matty Rich was one of them.
And Spike had a funky little moment too.
It's
straight. Matty's movie was Straight Out of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Was the big movie that sort of launched him,
and this was his follow up,
and that was the studio follow up, and
that did not do well.
And Spike had a lot of attitude-y kind of stuff. I did the junket for that one too.
I remember. The thing is, The Inkwell is really, really well intended as a kind of a coming of age film. It's very sweet. It's
about the sort of black bourgeois, and The Inkwell was the sort of vacation spot in like South Carolina or something like that, where the sort of black and it was just this little
it's a coming of age film.
comedy with a coming of age film.
It's just not very well made.
It's just not very.
He didn't master his craft.
Not yet, because Straight Out of Brooklyn, and if you look at Straight Out of Brooklyn now, it's not all that well made. But it was the subject matter.
Well, and the fact that he raised money to make the movie by going around the neighborhood and asking people for investment.
Yeah.
It was more as a producer that he excelled in getting that movie made.
The other filmmaker, the other two, John Singleton, of course, and then there was Charles Lane, who made that beautiful little
Sidewalk
Story, sort of,
which is on Blu-ray. Lane is amazing.
Now he had skills and should have had a larger career.
Yeah. But he's a very experimental guy. He's
more in the vein of Charles Burnett, who we talked about.
Very much so. Bruce Willis in Color of Night by Richard Rush. This film is legendarily terrible.
Oh man, I did the junket for that too, dude. This is all home. This is all home week for me.
So Richard Rush, who did The Stuntman and a lot of other great movies. Richard Rush
did he have the heart attack on that or this?
I think it was The Stuntman.
It's The Stuntman
because Peter O'Toole drove him crazy.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. This is a terrible movie with an amazingly funny and yet somehow strangely kind of sexy
the whole thing with Jane March, right?
Yeah, Jane March. That whole pool bit. Anyway, so it's this movie was ripped. But you know what? When you look at it in hindsight, it kind of is it's almost like the trashy Joe Esterhaas movie that Joe Esterhaas didn't write.
And it lives. First of all, there were several of these.
Yeah,
it's just that it wouldn't by itself.
No,
out there being bad and sort of hyper sexy.
Yep,
and all that kind of stuff. Some of them became legend. This one became legend for a bad reason.
There's a director's cut on here. There's a director's cut that's 20 minutes longer.
Oh my goodness,
it's not better. But it's different, and Richard Rush does the commentary on the director's cut. This is my cut, and it took the movie away from me. And then Matthew Chapman, who wrote it, does the commentary on the theatrical cut. I would say if you've got like 4.5 hours to blow,
Watch them all.
Watch it all. More than that, just 8 hours. Watch the movies first, back to back, and then listen to the commentaries. If you can spend all day and you don't mind wasting it on Color of Night, I kind of would recommend you do.
Yeah.
Cradle Will Rock is a Tim Robbins directed movie that unfortunately didn't really get the attention it deserved. It kind of sort of ended Tim Robbins' directing career in a lot of ways, too. This takes place in the 1930s, and it all centers around a loosely based series of factual, well, how do I put it? Orson Welles, Diego Rivera.
The guy who wrote it. What was his name? The guy who wrote the play. There's an actual play called Cradle Will Rock.
Yes, and there's a moment in the 1930s that involves all of these people and Orson Welles and his stage troupe.
During the WPA and when the government was financing all these things.
Before Welles became a filmmaker, when he was still, a theater guy. And Diego
John Houseman, all these people were involved.
Yeah, it's a really interesting tapestry of a particular moment. And what I really love about this, the thing I love most about this is a credit at the end of the film that says something to the effect of edited on old-fashioned movie equipment. They just
and it's funny.
Film.
You and I screened that movie together, whatever year that was.
Yeah. Hope Springs with Colin Firth, Heather Graham, Minnie Driver. This is just a perfectly sweet romantic comedy that it's not great. It's directed by Mark Herman, whom I've always thought a great deal of. He's just a really good director of romantic comedies, doesn't overstay its welcome. Mary Steenburgen is a nice supporting part. Oliver Platt is funny as always. And you know what? Go for it. I mean, Mark Herman wrote me a very, very nice letter, too, after I gave a good review to Blame It on the Bellboy.
Yeah.
And I've never forgotten that, and I think he deserves a better career. The remake of Born Yesterday with Melanie Griffith, John Goodman, and Don Johnson.
Not as good as the
No, not as good as the original, but it's got its moments. Luis Mandoki, who went on to do a lot of TV, was the director of this. And, I kind of look at this and I think I was maybe a little too hard on that movie in the 90s because I kind of wish they had movies like that again today. Alex Cox, talking about anachronistic, enigmatic, oddball filmmakers. Straight to Hell, one of those Alex Cox movies that is just almost impossible to describe. This one's from 1987 in the wake of Repo Man. And they did a 2K restoration on this, and I kind of almost can't tell because Cox shoots his movies so gritty. It's like, is it supposed to look like this? Yeah. In any case, Straight to Hell is kind of like it's almost like his version of Pulp Fiction in a way, if that makes sense. But it's some guys, some bandits bury some of their loot. And then it gets into kind of this weird out in the middle of the desert sort of Repo Man thing, and Jim Jarmusch shows up with a weird cameo, and it's all very just weird.
You could make movies like that at one time. You can make them.
Not today.
No.
So here's another interesting thing. In 1984, there were two movies that were made. They were almost identical, and yet one of them was very schmaltzy and melodramatic and romantic, and the other one was tough and gritty. But they're identical stories. It's really weird. One was The River with Mel Gibson and Sissy Spacek, directed by Mark Rydell. And the other one, the gritty one, was Country, directed by Richard Pierce with Jessica Lange and Sam Shepard.
Yeah.
If you want to really understand the plight of the farmers in the 1980s and what they went through in terms of losing their mortgages.
Farm aid period.
The farm aid period, right? The one that really captures that is not the one with the John Williams score, which is The River. It's this movie, Country. Sam Shepard, Jessica Lange, just absolutely tear your heart out. It is so tough to watch what they go through in this movie. It's a good movie. And film historian Lee Gambon does a really, really good audio commentary on this. And then the last two, we've got 1,000 Acres, also with Jessica Lange and Michelle Pfeiffer, also with Colin Firth, Keith Carradine, Jason Robards, all people we've already talked about today. And this was directed by Jocelyn Moorhouse, who is the wife of P.J. Hogan. They are both directors. P.J. Hogan, of course, does funny movies like Muriel's Wedding, and Jocelyn Moorhouse does stuff like basically 1,000 Acres. And this is not as good of a movie as I remembered, actually. I thought I liked it a lot more, and watching it again, it kind of wanes a little bit. But watching Jessica Lange and Michelle Pfeiffer makes it all worth it. They are both absolutely terrific. It's the script by Laura Jones that I kind of doesn't quite work so well for me anymore. And maybe it's the source material. Jane Smiley wrote the Pulitzer Prize winning book, which kind of can't really be adapted. And then lastly, Deep Rising with Treat Williams and Famke Janssen.
Another junk of that.
Yeah, they did kind of a special edition for this one. It's got a sleeve and a ton of extras on here. Interviews with everybody, mostly special effects people. But you know what? It's Stephen Sommers, who of course would go on to do the Mummy and Van Helsing and stuff like that. Directed it. Stephen Sommers, my wife also worked with him on a film called Gunman. But he wrote and directed this, and it really is an artifact of another era. They don't make movies like this. This is a 1990s sci-fi action movie with all of its kind of cheesy, blockbustery schmaltz intact, and doesn't really work as a monster movie. It's totally a ripoff of just about everything else that preceded it. Aliens and fill in the blanks. But I don't know. There's a weird, strange kind of enjoyable cheesiness to it.
I got a couple here that I will take a stab at, including Autumn in New York, Richard Gere and Winona Ryder, and a film directed by Joan Chen, one of three films directed by Joan Chen. The only feature she did a couple of shorts. I rather enjoyed this movie. It's about just a sort of aging playboy. He falls in love with a young girl, as aging playboys are wont to do, but she turns out to be terminally ill. So it lives in that sort of was the Ryan O'Neal and Ally McGraw?
Oh yeah.
That space,
yeah.
Sort of deeply romantic, a little bit schmaltzy.
Love story.
A love story. Thank you. And but and with shades of indecent exposure, Robert Redford and all that. But it's just it's sincere, and I rather liked it. And I think Joan Chen should have directed more movies. Personally,
she should have for sure. Absolutely. Her first film was Shoo Shoo the Sent Down Girl, which she's shot in China without approval of the authorities,
which was a hell of a thing to do. Yeah.
Oh man.
Joan suffered in some ways. Of course, Joan was in Lust, Caution, and famously in Twin Peaks on television. All that kind of. Her problem, too beautiful.
And then we got a trio of criterions here. The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez, Edward James Olmos starring, for director Robert M. Young. Really an extraordinary landmark film from 1982. Beautiful restoration, 2K on this. A bunch of really, really good extras. The usual criterion thing. Ballad of Gregorio Cortez really kind of broke through a barrier that had prevented a lot of Latino actors and Latino filmmakers who still have a hard time, but it really opened a door in a way, especially so it said, this is not necessarily a foreign film phenomenon. There are American filmmakers who this is part of our culture too, part of our film culture. Mm-hmm. The original Ernst Lubitsch, Heaven Can Wait, not to be confused with the Warren Beatty film. This is from 1943. Don Amici has just never been more charming. Gene Tierney never been more beautiful, and Ernst Lubitsch's direction has never been more meticulous. Wonderful conversation on here from 2005 between Molly Haskell and Andrew Sarris, two of the great film critics of all time. And a 1982 episode of Creativity with Bill Moyers, looking into the life of screenwriter Samson Rafelson. This is just an absolutely terrific classic. And then the last one, Smithereens, Susan Seidelman's kind of amazing landmark 1982 film, which was one of the first movies of the 80s to break through for a lot of female directors. Susan Seidelman was one of those. And then she went on to do, Desperately Seeking Susan and kind of, which was also a thing, but it wasn't Smithereens. Smithereens has a lot of...
Madonna was the thing about Desperately Seeking Susan.
Yeah. But Smithereens really has a lot of cool grit and the way that they, visualize New York. It captured a moment, and it was a big deal at Cannes, and it really captured a moment and a style, and it just broke a ceiling for women.
Neat stuff. Two left over here. Crazy Six, neat movie that I really like. Rob Lowe, Burt Reynolds, Ice-T. Before he started playing cops on television, and Mario Van Peebles in an Howard Puyun film. This is kind of a neat movie, dark little gritty movie set in Eastern Europe. You got this kid played by Rob Lowe. They call him Crazy Six because he's the sixth child in this notorious drug family. He's crazy for drugs, and it's all about the way that part of Eastern Europe is sort of falling apart and everything is crumbling, and the drug trade is just going completely insane. And these families. These mafia families are fighting over this trade. I got to tell you, this is some good, gritty Burt Reynolds. This is some good, gritty T, and this is some damn good Rob Lowe before he sort of became, handsome television guy. It was like
he's a handsome television guy now. That's all he is. Yeah.
It's post young Rob Lowe, but pre handsome television Rob Lowe. And then we have from 1975 a film that nowadays they call The Boss.
Yep.
Or just
that's not what it was called then.
That's not what it was called in 1995. It was called Boss, Nigger, hard R. Right, 1974-75 when this film came out, and it was a great name and the correct name. And
Fred Williamson does not like that they've released this movie with the new title.
With the new title,
very upfront.
Fred the Hammer Williamson played the guy in this movie. And if you think about Quentin Tarantino's Django, wholly and completely influenced as much by any Django film by this movie. Yeah. By Fred Williamson in this movie. When you're watching Django, you're really watching
very, very
this
true
movie right here. Anyway, it's about a guy, a former slave, who stops being a slave, gets a gun and a hat, and becomes the boss.
That's it. This is a really subversive classic from the blaxploitation era, and I love this movie. And the thing is, Fred Williamson is such an interesting guy because he insists, and they keep the original title on the movie itself. It's just not on the packaging. Yeah. But he wanted to reclaim that word. Yeah. He wanted to undermine that word. He wanted to subvert it. And I think we know today that he has failed to do so. Yeah. But at the time, he was, here's the great story that Fred Williamson told me, and it pertains to everything we've talked about today with Spike Lee
really does.
It does. Fred Williamson was, we're talking about a guy who was had been a football player, and became a movie actor, and became a movie director, and a movie producer. Mm-hmm. And he went and when he was making his own movies, producing his own movies, he was determined to not basically be at the mercy of anybody else. And he was one of the first to say, "I'm going to go independent." Rudy Ray Moore was another one of
them. The Dolomite films. Yeah.
And Fred Williamson, he told me, I interviewed him for Original Gangsters, which he produced and acted in, pulled everybody back together. And he said he went to the Cannes Film Festival one year with all of his movies, and he set up shop in a little booth. He couldn't afford to get the big hotel suites like the bigger companies, and people kept coming and just saying, "How much you want for your movies? Do you realize this, that, and the other thing?" He goes, "These movies, they star you. I mean, black actors and black movies, they don't really sell in Europe." And they tried to talk him down. The old trope. And they tried to talk him down, and Fred Williamson said, "Yeah, I don't think so. I know what my movies are worth.
Yeah,
I know how they play." But thanks for asking. And he stood his ground, and he said the whole festival time, nobody bought a single movie until 2 days before the end of the festival. They all came back and paid him what he was asking for.
Because he stood his ground. And
he
it's
stood his ground.
Thing. So it actually plays Black Klansman, for instance.
Yeah.
So this movie that they changed the name of. So you watch Black Klansman, and not unlike Django, the word that we insist on calling the N-word is in that movie about 400 times, Black Klansman.
Yeah.
Except that here's the thing, and I know that Spike knows this, and sometimes it's the thing that Quentin doesn't always get right.
Right.
When you watch Black Klansman, the word that we insist on calling the N-word, which is the word that shows up in a lot of hip-hop music, Nigga, or however you want to spell it, that word never is spoken in Black Klansman, not once, not ever. Everybody who says that word is saying Nigger, 1972, Colorado Springs, hard R. And Spike knows that. No one, because I heard someone the other day, what about, and Spike's like, "You're not listening."
Yeah.
So listen, go back and listen to the movie again.
Yeah.
Black folks know that these are not the same words.
That's right.
And one of them has a whole lot of meanings, and depending on who you are, you can use it or not use it. The other one, ER, only has the one meaning. Mm-hmm. And it's the thing that Fred Williamson knows, and that Spike knows, and that I wish that the greater culture would get to know. And it's the thing I've been talking about. Anyway, cool stuff.
It is. So I'm a huge Fred Williamson fan. And speaking of, Three the Hard Way.
Yeah.
That is a classic from the era that is, as long as Black Klansman is out there, maybe that'll finally come out, because that has never been released.
Get out of here.
Never been on DVD, never been on Blu-ray. Three the Hard Way. For those who don't know, I mean, it's Jim Brown and Jim Kelly are the other ones in that one, and it has a whole kind of KKK subplot to it.
Fame,
It would be a good time to resurrect that, and heck, get Spike to even do an intro and a commentary if he wants to.
Good time to sort of resurrect that in a bunch of ways.
Yeah.
Gordon Parks Jr.
Yep. All right. With that, we are done this week and for next week, and then we'll be back the week after and try to get back in gear. And wish me well. Kindergarten begins.
Actually, it'll give you a little bit more time in your day.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.